My name is Choden, and together with Natasha, I'll be leading a trauma-sensitive workshop for mindfulness teachers from the 18th to the 20th of October, both in LIng and online. I thought to just say a few words about it. The first important point is that mindfulness is not a cure-all for everything. Many people think that mindfulness is the solution to whatever issue or malady we might have in life. Recent research around trauma has shown that actually in some cases, mindfulness can trigger or exacerbate trauma symptoms. And therefore, what is so important is a trauma-informed approach to how we practice mindfulness. Because if mindfulness is practiced in that context, then it becomes hugely effective and beneficial. And I think this is particularly relevant to us as teachers, not only as practitioners of mindfulness, but specifically as teachers. So during this workshop, both Natasha and I will look at what trauma is. Natasha will explain the different types of trauma, like early childhood trauma, PTSD, transgenerational trauma, racial trauma, just to give an overview and context for how trauma might show up. We will then explore a trauma-informed approach to teaching mindfulness. And I think what is so important is how we can look after ourselves as teachers. So it's not just a matter of looking after our participants, that's very important, but how can we look after ourselves when we teach mindfulness? So the idea is that the workshop, the weekend, will be very interactive. There will be reflection, group work, practice, and drawing on the wisdom of the group. And during the weekend, we will work with the 4 R's from David Treleaven, who wrote a seminal book on trauma-sensitive mindfulness. And the first R is to realize what trauma is, and now specifically what trauma is in relation to the practice of mindfulness. So having some kind of understanding in this area will be important. And secondly, to recognize the signs of trauma when they show up in people we teach, especially the nonverbal signs, such as people suddenly opening their eyes, or we notice that the breathing pattern changes, or things like that we can pick up from the people we are teaching. And then that's the second R, to recognize. The third R is to respond. So how can we respond skillfully to what we have noticed? And in particular, how can we respond or work with people who have strayed out of their window of tolerance? So window of tolerance is a really key understanding or theme in trauma-sensitive mindfulness, which means that there's an optimal area where we feel regulated, at peace, connected, but it's very easy to fall out of that optimal zone. So how do we help people come back into their window of tolerance will be an important focus. And not only that, but avoiding re-traumatization. So how do we, in practical ways, ensure that people are safe? Working with inclusive language, maybe looking at the length of the practices that we lead, maybe regular movement breaks, maybe shifting from an inner focus to an outer focus, and maybe inviting people to open their eyes if need be. So these are some practical things that we will look at. But the real idea is that this will be an exploration together as teachers, not Natasha and I as experts, just imparting our wisdom, but drawing on the wisdom of the group to really ensure that we look after ourselves as teachers and we look after our participants. So we hope you can join us in LIng or online from the 18th to the 20th of October.